Hey, you good at poker? Other card games, bluffing, those betting techniques. Can we use those in the world of persuasion, motivation, influence, sales? And the answer is absolutely a lot we can learn. When to bluff? Do we bluff? Do we bet? Are they making it up? Who's telling the truth? What's going on? Reading body language. It's all involved when you get good at poker. Not that I'm suggesting that you gamble, but when you get at games at heart, gin, those other games of chance, this can help you out not only in your games, but in the world of persuasion and influence. Let's do it.
Maximize your influence. Kurt Mortensen is the author of Persuasion IQ, Laws of Charisma, and the best-selling book, Maximum Influence.
So this can do with every aspect of life, a lot of things we can learn. That's the key of getting great, getting better at what we do. We look at other industries, other professions, other things that can teach us new tools, new skills, enhance existing tools and skills. Again, whether it be at poker or at hearts or at gin or what your game is, when do you bluff? When do you bet? When are they bluffing? When are they lying? I'm not telling you to lie in the world of sales and influence, but you do need to know when other people are lying or not telling the truth or bluffing. When I teach negotiation workshops and we get into the detecting deception module, I always say, and I'm going to say it here, a little disclaimer, I don't teach you this to become better liars. I teach this to detect deception, detect the bluff, even though we use it in games, and that's okay. Because I don't know if you've seen these poker competitions online. They're wearing sunglasses. They're hiding their tells. We're going to talk about that. They're bluffing. They're betting the number of chips. It's all strategic. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about it. Welcome to podcast 579. Kurt Mortensen here. This is Maximize Your Influence. We can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Spotify. Everything you need is at MaximizeYourInfluence.com, including your free Persuasion IQ assessment, all the specials we talked about, the newsletter, and advanced training programs. All right, housekeeping out of the way. Let's get into that persuasion blunder.
Don't!
So here I am in Denver, Colorado. It's getting late, hungry, haven't eaten, taught all day, not a lot of options. The hotel didn't have much, so there was a Subway. Hey, why not? Quick, easy, fast, let's do it. And I get there, and it was pretty vacant. It was kind of downtown, and I stood in line, and I was the only person in line, and the only worker there was just mopping. You could tell she had no ownership, couldn't give a rip, was actually annoyed that I was there. I think she wanted to close up early. I think they were going to close in about a half hour, and then she finally came over, put on new gloves. Can I help you? I ordered my sandwich, and I chose my bread. Oh, we don't have that. I chose another bread. We don't have that. I'm like, okay. There was only one. She could have told me that. And then we started going down the line, chose my protein. Well, I want some lettuce. Oh, we don't have lettuce. I'm like, all right, how about some tomatoes? We don't have tomatoes. I'm like, how can you have a sandwich without lettuce or tomatoes? I mean, come on, really? You could have told me that ahead of time, but no. Did not, and was annoyed that I wanted lettuce and tomatoes. Anyway, just went downhill from there. And then I wanted it toasted and got the eye roll. Looking back at it, I should have walked. I don't know why I paid for this sandwich. It wasn't good. Didn't have anything on it. The takeaways are, be careful of who you employ. Do they have ownership? Are they going to treat people like they treated me? And probably never go back, or at least it's going to be a couple years before I go back and give it another try. But managing expectations. Could have that been fixed? Okay, they ran out of lettuce and tomatoes. Is that okay? I don't know. The first response is no, this is what they do. Was it a supply chain issue? Was it they were just too lazy to chop more lettuce or whatever they do because they were getting ready to close? But she could have made other options. She could have let me know up front. She could have had a smile. Managing expectations is important because remember, Frustration comes from unmet expectations, which were unmet. No lettuce, no tomatoes, bad attitude. Hello. Strike one, strike two, strike three. Could have recommended a protein bowl, a breakfast sandwich, which I do love, instead of letting those become a frustration and fester into a little anger. Just saying, managing expectation, which is one of the 12 laws of maximum influence. Expectations can help in the influence process, and expectations can hurt in the influence process. Even a simple thing like a presupposition, just the way you talk, presupposing they're going to do it, they're going to buy, they're going to have another meeting, they're going to say yes, goes a long way. One of my big pet peeve is when a persuader, at the end of their presentation, they put their energy into this and they shake their head in the no fashion. You wouldn't be interested, would you? Of course, no, I'm not interested. Of course they're not. You just fed the expectation that they would not be interested. So with that, let's go to our geeky Scarly article. The Origins of the Ostrich Effect from the University of Chicago Psychological Science and Dr. Reisett and Kinsler talking about the ostrich effect. So we've had these nagging feelings that we should go to the doctor, we should look something up, we should look at a bill, we don't look at our investment portfolio that is plummeting. The ostrich effect reveals a deep-seated human tendency to bury our heads in the sand when reality gets us a little too much. It's a little too hard to handle. Because think about it, if you have a portfolio, an investment account, a crypto account, we love to check at it and look at it when it's going up. It feels good, but when we know it's going down, we just don't look at it. Now, what's interesting is that when we're younger, we have this innate curiosity. Why? We want to know. We look it up. We want to know. We look it up. But as we age, they say it curdles, interesting word, into willful ignorance. When and why we start dodging uncomfortable facts, what websites we look at. So this study looks at a roadmap to reclaim that inquisitive spirit, to foster better choices in health, finance, and society. Basically, again, it goes back to the ostrich. I guess it's really not true. It's a myth that the ostrich puts their head in the sand to evade danger, which, if a lion's chasing you and you're putting your head in the sand, that's not going to end well. So this ostrich effect describes the human habit of deliberately avoiding information that might provoke discomfort, even though when we confront it, could yield benefits. Whether we procrastinate going to the dentist, don't really want to go to the medical doctor, review our finances, our retirement. Basically, we prioritize short-term emotional relief over long-term gains. So the reason they did this study is they were bombarded with data that adults would shun vital information to spare themselves emotional discomfort, but kids had this unbridled curiosity. Again, the why, how does this work? Why are you doing that? What do you think? They love to learn. They love to know. And they're like, okay, when does this transition happen? How this affects business, how this affects our decisions is all part of that. So the study wanted to prevent that long-term pitfall of ignorance. And the way to do that is to understand what's going on here. So they did experiments with children and adults looking at avoidance. And they said there's 5 types of avoidance: dodging negative emotions, threats to our self-image, challenges to our beliefs, preferences protection, and self-interested deception. So they had them do different tasks that mimicked real stakes without real harm. They observed them, and they looked who was seeking information, who wanted to know more, and who put their head in the sand like that ostrich. And again, they found that there's an age thing here. Kids, why? Curiosity. Adults, I don't want to know. I'm putting my head in the sand. It hurts too much. I'm going to pretend it's not an issue and it's going to go away. And of course, we know it never does. So to fix this, they say start with self-auditing. When tempted to skip that tough email, that tough conversation, that news alert, pause, label the motive. Is this fear, anxiety, threat to my ego? Is it okay to hurt my short-term happiness versus long-term potential? For example, like health, getting that annual checkup. We know it's a pain. We know we don't want to know, but long-term, that can really help. Looking at our financial portfolio, it might be painful. It's down, but long-term, we can make some adjustments and it can help. So humans do have this tendency to want to resolve uncertainty, but when the solution is threatening, many times we go to avoidance. So bottom line, we need to be more like children, being inquisitive, looking, knowing that the short-term pain is worth it for the long-term benefits. They say we're drowning in data, yet starved for wisdom. And this research study reminds us that true strength, true resilience, true success lies not only in inquiring, being courageous, but also can make a big difference in your future self, in your success, your health, and your finances. Time for listener email.
Oh boy!
Pete from Australia. Love maximize your influence. I do tell my family and friends, but not quite my enemies. All right, Pete, got to work on that one. He says, I love poker, and it's fascinating the influence of what happens during these games and that I need to win more. I am losing too much. What can you teach me to get better at poker? All right, Pete, let's talk about that, but we're also going to bridge that with the world of persuasion and influence. So let's talk about some strategies, look at some expert advice about not only poker. I use that one because that's the most popular, but it can be any game of chance, whether it's gambling or just a game at home that doesn't include betting money. So the first one, you look at the experts, they say be tight. That means being selective about the hands you play. That's being tight. So that's knowing when to enter the pot, being aggressive, and when to fold, give up to minimize your losses. So when you fold on those mediocre hands and push hard on the strong ones, you avoid unnecessary risk while pressuring your opponents to fold or make mistakes. So in persuasion, be selective about what you're asking them to do. What cards are you holding? Do you have high potential opportunities? Do you have a strong value or offer? Know when to assert your position. Know when to be confident. In negotiation, you need to know when to hold back, when you have leverage, when to say yes, when to say no, when to be assertive, when to give a concession. Bottom line there, do your research, know your cards. Before you go into a persuasive situation or negotiation, know what you can leverage, know your cards, know when to give a concession. That all helps when you've done your research. Again, we talked about that a few weeks ago in negotiation. That's one of the biggest blunders is not doing your research, not knowing your cards. Next one is knowing when to bluff. So bluffing involves betting or raising the stakes when you have a weak hand and you know you're probably not going to win. You're close, you're not quite sure, but you're assuming someone probably has better cards than you do, but you're just not sure. So this relies on timing, reading others, knowing the numbers, the statistics. When you're successful bluffing, a lot of time that it can exploit perceived weaknesses of others, or basically you're being more confident when they're not feeling confident. So you can use ethical bluffing, especially when you're uncertain, you're not quite sure, something comes up that you need a little more information about. You can bluff. You could hold your own. If you see a prospect that doubts their solution, you could be confident. Is this a time to offer a guarantee? Is this a time to show the real value of your product or service? So there is an ethical projection of confidence, a time to bluff, especially when you're gathering information, especially you don't know where they're at, what they're doing, what their cards are. Good time to see what they really have. Are they making it up? Are they trying to gather information? Can go a long way. Then in poker, in these games, you have what's called a tell. Now, a tell is a subtle physical or behavioral cue, like a nervous tick or a pattern that can reveal their intentions, your opponent or prospect's strengths or intentions. So by observing and reading and interpreting these signals, you gain insights about their strategy, what they're doing. Are they telling the truth or are they bluffing? So in persuasion and influence, read these nonverbal cues, the body language, their tone of voice, or the way they hesitate or pause. Understand unspoken objections, their interests. If someone's avoiding eye contact, shifting the way they sit in their seat, can tell you a lot. So it helps if you build rapport, you adapt your persuasion to them, but the other key too is to find their default, their standard. Meaning you're talking before the persuasion encounter, and maybe you're talking about weather or just things that don't matter, or their family or their company, and look at their standard behavior. And then during the persuasion process, or poker, when that changes, things are different. That means emotions are hitting. Those are probably their tells. Another one to look at is position awareness. Position refers to your seating order relative to the dealer. Going last gives you an advantage over seeing others who are going first. The later the position, the more informed the decision. You can be more aggressive in your betting with that type of information to see what other people are doing. It's different when you go first versus last. So in negotiation, position yourself by when you go, when you listen, when you ask questions. For example, in a group discussion, after you get all the information, might be a good time to speak last. When you speak first or make the first offer, most of the time you're doing that without all the information that you could have gleaned from the group. So if you're not quite sure, you want to go last, ask more questions, see where people are at, be a better listener, keep them talking, not as a persuader, interrogator, lawyer type person, but as a consultant, as someone that truly cares. Next one, know when to fold. Give up or at least schedule another meeting, come back another time to persuade. So again, folding means discarding your hand early to avoid any more losses. You feel the odds are against you and you're preserving your chips for another opportunity, another day, another encounter. Now, this requires ego control because you want to win. Just like in persuasion negotiation, you want to win, you want to get the deal, you want to get the sale. But the numbers show that good players fold 80% of hands, cutting losses and waiting for that favorable opportunity. So in influence, negotiation, knowing when to fold, knowing when to give up, knowing when to walk is all part of this process. Especially if resistance is too high, they're in a bad mood, things aren't going well, you can win better concessions at another time. So it's a power tool of negotiation, knowing when to walk, getting another meeting, time to do more research. Maybe it's time to decide you don't want to work with them. If they're using one of those dirty tricks in negotiation, you're like, really? I'm done, I'm walking, cut your losses. You don't want to do business with them long term. Or my favorite one, a lot of companies now are firing some of their customers. 20% of your customers make 80% of your revenue, right? 80-20. But a lot of times that 20%, they're taking 80% of your time. They're just high maintenance. So a lot of companies are like, no, we don't want to work with you. And they come back and say, no, really, we want to work with you. I'm like, no, we're not. You're fired. Can save you a lot of time. So in persuasion, by understanding your case, drawing out the objections, the ideas, using strategy instead of vomiting on them can give you stronger terms. Basically, we've called it slow is fast. Slow down, take a look, time to fold, time to trap, time to call is all part of the strategy. And you should treat persuasion negotiation like a game. It's fun. There's strategy. It is like poker. It is like hearts. It is like gin. It is like blackjack. So bottom line, poker teaches that sales and influence thrive on psychology, not just facts. Reading people, taking smart risks. We need to understand that true mastery creates mutual wins, not zero-sum games. So you can learn to become a better negotiator and a better persuader by the card games that you play at the casino, at home, wherever. Learn these skills. So that's Maximize Your Influence for today. That is podcast 579. We're going to revisit our special InfluenceUniversity.com Gold Lifetime. Not a monthly subscription, lifetime, 90% off. All my videos, all my books, all my audios, persuasion software that persuades for you, the 52-week program, the archives, the library, all in one place. Go as fast or as slow as you want. You can do one a day, one a week, whatever you need to do. InfluenceUniversity.com/special. The link's in your newsletter and at InfluenceUniversity.com. Take something you learned today. Become a better poker player, a better negotiator, better influencer, a better person, and go out and persuade with power.